positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, unexpectedly good news for the country. Find out more shortly. And let me tell you, it will annoy all of the right people. My Mark Meets guest is a true showbiz legend, star of stage and screen, including those classic Carry-On films, Anita Harris. In the big story, following outrage after her bold speech in America, are Suella Braverman's critics out of touch with the public's views on immigration? I'll be speaking to the politics professor who says the liberal elite need a reality check. And in my Take at 10, with a new set of rules giving their highest paid stars freedom to be political, the BBC have given up any pretense of being impartial. The only winner is Saint Gary Lineker. So 2 hours of big opinion, debate and entertainment along the way. It is Friday night, so the weekend starts here. Happy Friday, one and all. We don't do boring, as you know. And in fact, at 10 o'clock, I will be making a special statement about GB News. It's at 10, so you won't want to miss it. Lots to get through, folks. But first, the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. It is 9:01 here in the GB newsroom. The Libyan Coast Guard has been accused of deliberately ramming and sinking a migrant boat in the Mediterranean, leaving dozens of people in the water, and some of them are still missing.
Mayday, 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 relay, mayday, relay, mayday, relay. People in the water.
Now, this dramatic footage GB News has acquired was taken by the Sea Watch NGO. It was off the coast of Benghazi in the west of Libya. It shows a large migrant inflatable boat beginning to sink. The Libyan Coast Guard is close by, one large vessel and a rigid inflatable too. Dozens of people, you can see them in the water. They're using inner tubes as makeshift life jackets. And we have a statement from the Sea Watch spokesperson who said this: the so-called Libyan Coast Guard rammed and caused the sinking of a dinghy overloaded with at least 50 people. Some of them were certainly captured and deported to Libya. The survivors cannot be found. More on this story as soon as we get it. The policeman who killed an unarmed man during a foiled prisoner escape more than 7 years ago must face disciplinary proceedings. Jermaine Baker died during a Met Police operation that thwarted a plot to free 2 prisoners being taken to court in 2017. He was unarmed. Prosecutors decided the officer shouldn't face criminal charges in 2017, but now the IOPC, an independent police watchdog, has told Scotland Yard he must face gross misconduct proceedings. The Met, though, says it's reviewing the decision. There's some more breaking news. The teenage girl who died after a school coach crashed on the M53 motorway in the Wirral on Friday has been named as Jessica Baker. A coach driver also died when the bus overturned. Pupils were on their way to Caldy Grange and West Kirby grammar schools earlier today. The bus was carrying 54 people when it collided with a car and struck a central reservation. 10 children were taken to hospital, 2 of them with serious injuries. A 17-year-old boy charged with the murder of a 15-year-old girl has been reprimanded in custody after appearing in court. Eliane Andam was stabbed to death in Croydon on Wednesday when she was on her way to school. The teenager, who can't be named for legal reasons, has also been charged with possessing a knife. Second person has been arrested in connection with the felling of a famous sycamore tree next to Hadrian's Wall. The tree in Northumberland was cut down on Thursday in what police believe was a deliberate act of vandalism. A man in his 60s has now been detained, along with a 16-year-old boy who was arrested yesterday. The sycamore gap tree featured in the 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. A man's been charged in Las Vegas with the murder of the rapper Tupac Shakur. The 25-year-old was killed, in 1996, some 27 years ago, in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. Well, a grand jury in Nevada has indicted the 60-year-old Dwayne Keffy D. Davis on a charge of murder with use of a deadly weapon. Davis has long been known to investigators and previously admitted in interviews he was in the Cadillac when the shots were fired. And rail passengers are facing a week of travel chaos as a result of fresh strikes and overtime bans. There will be almost no services in England tomorrow and also on Wednesday as members of the ASLEF union at 16 train companies target the beginning and the end of the Tory party conference. Wales and Scotland will also be affected. Passengers have already faced disruption today because of an 8-day overtime ban that began earlier. And much of the London Underground will be closed next Wednesday and Friday in a separate strike by the RMT. This is GB News on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker too. I'll be back with more a little later. Now it's over to Mark.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In my big opinion, unexpectedly good news for the country. Find out more shortly. And let me tell you, it will annoy all of the right people. In the big story following outrage after her bold speech in America, are Suella Braverman's critics out of touch with the public's views on immigration? I'll be speaking to the politics professor who says the liberal elite need a reality check. My Mark Meets guest is a true showbiz legend, star of stage and screen, including those classic Carry On films, Anita Harris. In My Take a 10, with a new set of rules giving us their highest paid stars freedom to be political, the BBC have given up any pretense of being impartial. The only winner is Saint Gary Lineker. Plus, in the Newsmaker, will the establishment close down GB News? I'll be speaking to a top Fleet Street insider in just a few minutes from now. We've got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30 with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, GB News presenter Albi Amankona, a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight, former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards, and a very good friend of mine, author and journalist Emma Wolfe. Tonight, I'll be asking the pundits, will ending the war on motorists win Rishi Sunak the next election? As waiting lists grow for obese patients, are we letting down fat Britain? And are attractive people more trustworthy? I wouldn't know. Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails. They come straight to my laptop, mark@gbnews.com. And let me tell you, folks, this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Also, it's Friday night, so you want big debate, you want big stories, you want big guests. But you want a bit of a laugh as well and a bit of fun. Of course you do. It's 9 o'clock. Let's hope you've cracked open a bottle of beer. Maybe you've fired up the kettle. Maybe you've opened those custard creams. But whatever it is, let's have 2 hours of fun. And let me tell you that at 10 o'clock, on the hour, I'll be making a special statement about GB News. At 10, you won't want to miss it. So lots to get through, but we start with my big opinion. Thoughts and prayers for those whose full-time job is to talk the country down. The UK economy has performed better than France and Germany since the pandemic, according to revised data. Revised data. Don't these people get anything right? Statisticians now believe that the British economy is 1.8% larger than before COVID struck. This according to the Office for National Statistics. France is believed to have grown by just 1.7% since COVID, and Germany 0.2%. Wait, so our economy has grown more than France and Germany, and we had Brexit, but I thought Brexit was really bad and we were the sick man of Europe. Germany and the Eurozone are now in recession. I'm so confused. What is going on? Well, as usual, hard data, reality and the facts have this annoying habit of contradicting the prescribed political narrative, which is that leaving the European Union has been a catastrophe and we should get back in as soon as possible. Although let's not forget, there are a few arguments in favour of Remain.
The other countries seem to have recovered a lot better from it than we have.
Germany's in a recession though, and we're not. So how is that true?
I'm not an economist.
Yeah. What else do you miss about the EU?
No, I like the EU.
Comedy gold on a Friday night. Day after day, week after week, month after month. Those who seize on any bad news for the country and who are now motivated for us to fail are being proved wrong time and time again. There are plenty of Remainers like myself who accepted the result of Brexit immediately and who are now happy to not just acknowledge the fact that Britain is blossoming outside of the bloc, but are happy to celebrate it. If you look at the economic performance of the country, it would appear that I made a terrible mistake voting Remain. I'm almost inclined to apologise to everyone. But I think we've had a few too many apologies on the channel this week. We have the AUKUS defence deal with America and Australia, a trade deal on the way with India and a market of 1 billion people. The City of London is planning reforms that could deliver a £200 billion boost to the economy. We're members of the CPTPP, which I thought was a cough mixture, but which is a trading bloc with some of the fastest growing economies in the world, and which represents a bigger market than the whole of the EU. We're growing more outside of the bloc than those member states currently in it. Whisper it, folks. Brexit is working. EU wouldn't believe it. Your reaction, Mark at GBnews.com. Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinions, so get your thoughts over to me, whether you agree or disagree. I'll get to your emails shortly, but tonight's top pundits: GB News presenter Albion Ancona, a brand new star to Mark Dolan tonight, former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards, and author and journalist Emma Wolfe. Well, there you go, Paul. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
We're going to have a roller coaster ride. Looking forward to your input on this. Look, the data doesn't lie. Brexit's working.
My question would be to anyone watching this and GB News views out there: do you feel better off than you did a few years ago? Do you feel more prosperous, more secure?
Feel is a very irrational word, isn't it? Well, I'm talking about the numbers here.
People know what their gas bill is. They know how much it takes to fill a car. They know that their wages are flatlined. They know that their mortgage has gone up.
And that's only happening in Britain, no other European country.
Well, we don't care what happens in the other countries. It's only about us, isn't it? The whole point is, I can't compare my well-being and income with some bloke in Germany and think, oh, well, that's OK then. I have to buy things in this country. I have to pay for things here. So the numbers, you're arguing about less than 1% of some of these GDP
It is marginal. It is marginal.
But The point is, people do not feel better off after Brexit. They feel worse off, and that's the reality. You talked about reality, but
you can't have a sentence that's about how people feel and then reality. These are the numbers. We were told if we left the European Union, there would be a run on the pound, the economy would crash, and we'd be the poor man of Europe. It hasn't happened. Germany's in recession, the Eurozone is in recession, and look at that growth Germany have had. What was it, 0.2% versus ours, almost 2%.
This is the narcissism of small differences, isn't it, frankly? I mean, you know, if you look at your gas bill...
It's an order of magnitude more than the German economy.
If you look at your mortgage, are you seriously saying that we're better off than we were 2 years ago, that somehow the economy is growing? And even if it is growing slightly, it's not being fairly distributed through the whole UK, is it? We're about to cancel HS2, it would seem. You know, whole sections of the UK have been cut off from any potential growth.
OK, Emma Wolfe, is Paul right to piss on the chips?
I wouldn't use such language, and I certainly wouldn't use such language, and I hate to disagree with Paul, but I have to say you're absolutely right. This is exactly my reaction. Every time you quote me these growth statistics, GDP, economic data, people are not feeling it. They are not feeling it in their wallets, Mark. They are not feeling it in their wage packets. They are not feeling it in their mortgage and rent costs. They are not feeling it on the supermarket shelves.
They would feel it more if we were
price inflation is off the scale.
And I don't disagree with that.
And this is, you know, it doesn't matter.
But they would feel it more if we were in recession, which we are not, and Germany are.
They would feel it more if we were in recession.
Yes,
therefore,
correct.
it's OK that people are struggling and that we're heading into winter and that the NHS is on its knees and this country is falling apart.
No one is saying that people aren't struggling. What I'm saying is that these statistics kill the narrative that Brexit has been a disaster.
I don't think Brexit was a disaster, but I think the way that the opportunities have been mismanaged and mishandled and wasted.
Not that badly mismanaged. Our economy has grown more in the last 2 years than Germany and France.
Look, I think that Paul and Emma have made some reasonable points. What I'm actually more concerned about and interested in is how all of these forecasters, whether or not it was the ONS, whether or not it was a lot of the economists, were saying the economy was going to be in recession or the growth was not going to be as high, and all of those estimations were totally wrong. It was these estimates which led to Liz Truss's budget not working very well because people were saying that we weren't going to have enough money to pay for the tax cuts that she wanted to implement. It's these estimates which all of our spending predictions are based upon. So why is it that the forecasters, time after time, underplay the growth of the British economy? Yes, people might not be feeling it in their pockets, but the simple fact of the matter is those numbers are what the economic budgetary forecasts are made upon. And if the forecasts were correct, then perhaps the government can make different spending choices.
So the numbers and the forecasts matter, but people don't?
No, that's not what I said. What I said was that the numbers, the way that they have been forecasted has been wrong, and the forecasts that are made decide the spending commitments that the government can make.
And also business sentiment as well, which is why this junk modelling is so damaging to our economy. Paul?
I was just making the point that Liz Truss actually completely ignored the Office for Budget Responsibility. That's one of the reasons her mini-budget was such a disaster.
But it was also, the forecasts were also wrong.
But she hadn't listened to the experts, and the whole thing.
But the experts were wrong. That's the point.
We also have a Bank of England who's totally unfit for purpose.
Well, you raise a good point, Albie. The bottom line, Paul, is that actually these revised figures would suggest Liz Truss could probably have afforded those tax cuts.
Well, I don't believe a word of that, because you saw the numbers and then you saw how the markets reacted to that, and it was a catastrophe, and she was out of office. So I don't think we should relive that one, do you?
Well, listen, I am in agreement with my pundits on this, which is the economy is in trouble. Absolutely, it is. Everyone is struggling, absolutely, except for the very lucky super rich. But this economic good news contradicts the idea that Brexit has been a disaster. Remainers are crying into their soup tonight, and I have no sympathy. Coming up next in the Newsmaker, will the establishment close down GB News? I'll be speaking to a top Fleet Street, easy for you to say, a top Fleet Street insider, plus tomorrow's front pages as well. So much to get through. I'll see you in 2.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Stunning news on the economy. The British economy has grown faster than France and Germany in the last 2 years. We are a powerhouse and we're outside of Brexit. Who'd have thunk it, right? We are not in the European Union. Well, a big response, of course, that was my big opinion. Let's have a look at what Peter has to say. Peter says, hi, Mark. Your panel are inveterate knockers. Don't Google that, by the way. You could be quite shocked. If they won't accept data, how would they govern if they were in power? Tarot cards, says Peter. Kate says, you're right, the Ramonas are still moaning. We've had COVID, we're conducting a war in Ukraine. We had a year off with wages that had to be paid for. We're not struggling. Look at all the people going on holiday, and you don't do that if you're broke, do you? Get real, you Ramonas. Britain is great and getting better every day. Kate, thank you for that. Emailing in from the great city of Leicester. Another Peter says, Mark, I don't agree with your guests saying that we don't feel better off. We are free of the draconian EU, which is lovely. Plus, Peter adds, GB News must survive, Mark. It is the best channel ever. Well, let me tell you that in just 40 minutes' time, at exactly 10 o'clock on the button, I'll be making a statement about GB News. OK, look, couple more emails if Dominique allows me. OK. Ray says, Mark, people like those on your panel were quick to use data to show that we were failing outside the EU. Now the data shows how well we're doing, and they say, never mind the data. These people need to cut the blatant hypocrisy. And last but not least, how about this from Kathy? Kathy, how are you? Kathy sent me 3 kisses, by the way. I feel very flattered on a Friday night. Thank you, Kathy. Hi, Mark. I'm of an age to remember going into the EEC, and that's what it was, an economic union. It then grew into a monster ruled by unelected commissioners. This country isn't doing too badly considering all the chaos we've gone through. Europe is a basket case and will get worse, says Kathy. Listen, if you want to speak up for European Union membership, do let me know, mark@gbnews.com, because this programme is the home of diverse opinion, as you will have discovered from my excellent pundits. Now, you'd have to be living under a rock not to notice that this channel has made a few headlines this week following deeply sexist, misogynistic remarks made by a guest on one of our primetime shows. A full investigation is now underway, but the uproar from rival commentators and broadcasters has been deafening, with former Sky News presenter Adam Bolton, among others, calling for the channel to be shut down. So will the establishment forces that would love to see the back of us prevail? Let's speak to one of the best connected journalists in the country, the editor of the Express Online, David Maddox. Now, we're just getting the line to David because there was a little... Oh, there he is. He's made it. And David, listen, I knew we'd get you on air. You are, of course, a bit of a tech guru anyway, because your brilliant paper is online. David, your reaction to how figures like Adam Bolton and others have been calling for the channel to be shut down. What's going on?
I think the Adam Bolton intervention was particularly sad when you see a senior journalist who frankly should know better. But clearly, you know, he works for a rival TV station, and he made that suggestion of shutting down GB News on another rival TV station, on the BBC. He works for Talk TV and Times Radio, and he was sitting next to an MP who also is a pundit for Talk TV, who gets paid to do that, Caroline Noakes, as we revealed on Express.line this morning. And, you know, there seems to be, I would suggest there is at least a financial interest for them to have GB News out of the way. But, of course, the real issue here, and the real reason the BBC in particular are going after you, is that they don't like alternative voices. They don't like people who, you know, as in your last section, speak up for Brexit. I mean, my goodness me, when we went through all those negotiations, the broadcasters were as one with the kind of Ramonas, and it was just an outrage. So it's one of the reasons we needed GB News.
Can you believe that we're now sitting here, what is it, for 7 years since that Brexit referendum, and the UK economy growing faster than France and Germany? Astonishing how wrong they were. But you at the Express and of course, you know, a couple of other well-notable outlets spoke up for the case for Brexit. But here we are. Whisper it, Brexit's working.
Well, we of course, at the Express were the originals. We were the ones who backed it before it was fashionable. We were the ones who got with Nigel Farage and the others, persuaded them to, and persuaded people to go for it, because our readers were only too happy to back Brexit. And of course, our readers, who were all called racists and idiots by people like Adam Bolton and his friends, and Caroline Noakes, were, you know, have been proven right. The economy's growing very well comparatively to others. Yes, there's an economic downturn, but that's not Brexit. That's actually other things. I was just, in fact, you'll be able to read about this in the coming days. I've just been sitting down with an ambassador from an African country where our trade has doubled in the last couple of years, thanks to Brexit, where we now have an opportunity to get into the African continent and make huge gains. Tonight, we've seen that we're well on course for Kemi Badenoch set a target of £1 trillion of exports by 2030. Well, we now know that we're actually at 834 billion pounds of exports from last year. So, you know, it looks like she's going to easily meet her target and go well beyond that. It's, you know, it's actually really a huge success story. But of course, you'll only read about that in the Express or see it on GB News. You're unlikely to see it on your rivals who want you shut down.
Have you experienced cancel culture at the Express, David? Is there snobbery from the sort of progressive liberals in North London about your paper?
There always has been. And I mean, one of my previous jobs on the Sunday Express was when I was made political editor, I was given the task of trying to get our paper actually on Andrew Marr's morning show on the BBC, which after a while they decided they ought to take notice of us because we were the voice of the Brexiteers and actually carrying some quite important developments. But it was, it's tough going. If you listen to, well, I mean, I don't do it as often as I used to, but if you listen to the Today programme in the morning, you're not likely to hear the Express quoted, even though we carry stories which, are reflect a large part of the population, are very well read, and you're more likely to get The Guardian or The Times, that very narrow subsect of people, all middle class, slightly left wing or very left wing, and that's the issue. But we fight on and we make our voice heard, and that's that's why I really hope that GB News comes through this. I expect you will.
Well, David, we appreciate your support, and I've got to tell you the Express Online is a brilliant resource for the best political stories. Head there as and when you like for, of course, top showbiz news as well. David Maddox will catch up soon, the editor of the Daily Express Online. Thank you, David. Your reaction, Mark, at gbnews.com. Coming up with tonight's top pundits, will ending the war on motorists win Rishi Sunak the next election? As waiting lists grow for obese parents, oh dear, as waiting lists grow for obese patients. It's been a long week. Are we letting down fat Britain? And are attractive people more trustworthy? Plus, we've been asking in an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's poll, are Suella Braverman's critics out of touch with the public's views on immigration? Well, the results are in, and I will reveal all next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan Tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show, that's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. At exactly 10 o'clock on the button, I'll be making a statement about GB News. But earlier tonight, we've been asking you, are Suella Braverman's critics out of touch with the public's views on immigration? Well, the results are in. The people have spoken. 74% say yes and 26% say no. Reacting to the big stories of the day, tonight's top pundits, GB News star Albiam Ancona, former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards, and author and journalist Emma Wolfe. Now, Rishi Sunak is planning to block councils from introducing new 20-mile-an-hour zones as part of a plan for motorists. An announcement is expected at the Conservative Party conference, which starts this weekend. So, will ending the war on motorists help Rishi Sunak at the next election? What do you think, Emma?
Well, I'm not a motorist, I'm a cyclist, so I've never really understood 20-mile-an-hour zones. Why can't they be flexible, right? The other night, in the middle of the night, I was creeping along in a taxi cab, in a Hackney cab, at 20 miles an hour.
And it's costing you money by the minute.
Completely empty road, nothing coming, nothing going, and it made no sense at all to be 20 miles an hour. Why can't you, for example, during, I don't know, school rush hour or, you know, busy times, go down to 20 miles an hour? 20 miles an hour is very, very slow. Yeah. I do understand why motorists get frustrated by this. Yes. But here's my idea. Why not invest loads and loads and loads of money, billions of pounds, in really good infrastructure, really good transport, free buses, free trains, lovely cycle lanes everywhere? Why not actually invest money in good transport?
Well, because there are votes in supporting motorists, aren't there?
There are. Look, whatever the rights and wrongs are of supporting motorists, I'm not a motorist either. I'm a cyclist. Rishi Sunak.
God, I think we should have a whip round. We should have a whip round for you two.
I mean, look, I love bikes, but people don't like bikes. People like
Paul, how did you get here? Hoverboard?
I'm definitely not a cyclist. Can I just say that now?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I drive around in a battered old Toyota Prius, so I'm going to big up the drivers.
Is it ULEZ compliant?
Oh, it is, just about.
Just about.
By a whisker.
You're not an Uber driver, are you, in a Prius?
Well, that's my plan B, which is certainly...
when you get suspended.
certainly sprung to mind the last few days. But listen, what do you think about this move from Sunak? Because he's doing this for naked political reasons.
I think it's shrewd. Look, Rishi Sunak needs to find voters at the next election because at the polls it's looking very bad. So he's looking for groups of voters. Last week, when he announced his net zero policy, he was looking for people who were going to be impacted by the heat pumps, impacted by electric cars. Now he's looking for people, same group of people, similar groups of people who are going to be impacted by the 20-mile-an-hour speed zone. So he's looking for different pockets of voters in certain parts of the country, Mark, in that red wall, in those swing seats, to keep voting blue, because that's the only way that he'll stay in power at the next election.
Paul, many of my viewers and listeners will be cheering at this news. They're very happy about the reprieve for new petrol and diesel cars, and they're very happy about putting the brakes on 20 mile an hour.
Well, you just heard it there, plain and simple. It's an electoral calculus. It's designed to shore up a flagging government's support.
Is it wrong to have popular policies?
It's got nothing to do with motorists. It's nothing to do with potholes or fuel prices or roads
motorists.
or anything else. It's about winning the next election for the Conservatives.
Isn't that what Keir Starmer's doing with his policies? Or no lack of policy?
No, it's about putting forward a vision for the nation to try and make things better.
What does that mean, vision for the nation?
You know,
we need content. We need detail, and Rishi Sunak's got detail. He's going to get rid of the 20-mile-an-hour zones, and he's going to save petrol and diesel cars.
It is desperate, and I think the public will see through it.
But aren't you patronising to my viewers and listeners who rely on a car and will be delighted with this news?
I have a car. I'll be driving home when I get home this evening.
It's good news for you too.
I won't be on my bike. But I would say that, you know, people can see through an electoral bribe a mile off.
But Paul, you won't be driving at 20 in Sussex, where
you make a very good point. I have to say, I think that need for flexibility is a really good point, and we have the technology now to allow that, so that is a terribly good point. Public policy has to work, doesn't it? Has to get the consequence you want, not just an unintended consequence.
Yeah, well, Paul, listen, you may not be a cyclist, but I think you'd look great in Lycra, is all I'm going to say. Millions of adults are not being referred for NHS treatment that could help them lose weight, such as slimming clubs and weight management programmes. Only 3% were directed to weight loss services between 2007 and 2020 as waiting lists grow for obese patients. Are we letting down fat Britain? Albie?
No, fat Britain are letting down themselves by being fat. Being overweight is a choice for most people.
Is it?
Yes, it is. And it is very difficult with all of the processed food that we have at the moment. And I do actually think the government needs to do more in that area. I'm in favour of sugar taxes, salt taxes, all of that.
When did you stop being a Conservative?
That is not a not unconservative policy, Mark. I want to see
You've
less
gone
money.
woke, Albie.
I want to see
You're
less
a woke
money.
Tory.
I want to see less money spent on healthcare, and that is going to happen if people are healthier. And one of the ways that we can make Britain healthier is to make unhealthy living harder and healthy living easier. And sin taxes are a part of that.
And you do, to be fair, you are, I'll come to you for Paul in a second, you are rather qualified to comment on this because you've been on your own amazing weight loss journey, haven't you?
Yes, I mean, it was a very long time ago that I was overweight.
Can you give us a sense of what you achieved?
So when I was a teenager, you would have looked at me and thought, you know, that is an obese teenager.
Right, I can beat that. In the last year, I have lost 9 stone.
Wow. Congratulations.
No joke.
That is
5 inches off the neck, about 10 inches off the waist.
See, I said you'd look good in lycra.
Indeed, and I would. But without any operations and no weight loss, drugs.
Yeah, injections.
And not even engaging with the NHS at all, just by doing all the things we know you're supposed to do, cutting out the carbs, taking more steps. I haven't joined the gym, haven't got a personal trainer, haven't got any of the wonder drugs. Just straightforward.
So you've done it without medication, and it probably hasn't cost you much either, has it?
None at all. I've saved a fortune. You know how much of takeaways on Friday night?
Yeah.
Save a fortune. But the point is, I suppose, that actually not everyone can do that. So you do need the weight loss clubs, and you do need a bit of all the advice from the National Health Service. And the fact the NHS is not doing the preventative work that it should be for the many millions of people that do need that extra little nudge, I think is a great shame, because it's going to cost us far more down the line, not just in personal health, but in terms of the nation's health and the cost to the nation, because not everyone can lose 9 stone in a year.
Well, all I can say is I'm looking forward to your weight loss cookbook, which will be
Tom Watson got there first, didn't he?
So you did the low carb thing, did you really?
I sat with Tom Watson, who's an old friend, and he persuaded me this works. I was a very 22 stone fat man in his 50s, couldn't have walked down those stairs, and he said this works. Cut out the carbs, take more steps. Sugar is a carb, so cut that out as well, and just do it, in a very sensible way. Don't do anything dramatic, but month by month by month, the weight came off.
Well, yeah, I'll put it on record that I cut the carbs and lost 3 stone quite effortlessly in about 8 months. I will say, if you're going to change your lifestyle or your diet, consult your doctor first. I'm not an expert.
Of course, yes, and me too. No, absolutely right.
But you got results, and I got results. Briefly, are you disappointed that your success story is not resonating through the NHS and they're talking about injections instead?
I am a little bit, because I think it's an easy way out, isn't it? And also the injections are not even available to all. It reminds me a little bit of statins, where they sort of handed these out like sweets and people just carried on doing bad behaviour. You do need to have some personal responsibility. The NHS will fall over unless we take more responsibility for our own health and there's more prevention within the system. We can't just keep patching us up indefinitely.
There you go. This is the real pandemic, and it always was the real pandemic.
Exactly.
What, the last 2-3 decades?
Obesity is the real crisis. The NHS is, it's costing the NHS $6.5 billion a year. Why are we not taking it seriously? Wow, Paul and Albie, both of you have done it yourselves. And I'm not in a, I just think it's amazing. And this is kind of where I come from, is that it is about lifestyle. It is about sustainable long-term changes. I don't think that miracle weight loss drugs or bariatric surgery are the answer long-term, because they don't encourage people to actually live and eat and move and exercise differently.
Plus, this surgery costs the NHS a lot of money.
It costs a huge amount of money, and it can be dangerous if you don't then follow a much, much, much smaller diet. But what I don't understand is, when obesity is costing that much and is the second biggest preventable cause of cancer, why doctors and the NHS and the government are not taking it more seriously. This is the real pandemic, and it's, the reason that waiting lists for obese patients are growing is because obese patients are growing.
These food companies, like tobacco companies in the 20th century, are getting people hooked on sugar and salt.
Sugar,
and the government
salt,
is
fat.
too scared to do anything because people say, oh, you're infringing on my civil liberties. No one says that about tobacco, do they? We need to do what we did with the tobacco industry to the fast food industry in this country.
There you go. What an inspiring panel I've got tonight. Listen, we've got lots more to come in My Take at 10, with a new set of rules giving their highest paid stars freedom to be political. the BBC have given up any pretense of being impartial. The only winner is St Gary Lineker. And don't forget, at 10 o'clock in less than 20 minutes' time, on the hour, I'll be making a statement about GB News. But next up, my Mark Meets guest is a true showbiz legend, star of stage and screen, including those classic Carry On films, Anita Harris, live in the studio. She's next.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Coming up in my Take at 10, I'll be dealing with St Gary Lineker, who, thanks to lax new BBC rules, will be tweeting about politics. Welcome to hell. And don't forget, at 10 o'clock, an announcement from me about GB News. But first, this. Now, on Mark Meets, we always have some kind of celebrity, some person of note. We call them a legend. Well, this is the real deal. Tonight, chart-topping singer, actress and star of stage and screen and TV, a bona fide showbiz icon, Anita Harris. Whether it's the Carry On films, West End musicals, sparring with Morecambe and Wise, Bob Monkhouse, French and Saunders and many others, she's been entertaining us for more decades than you will believe. She's had an amazing musical theatre career as well, with a 2-year stint as Grisabella in Cats, to name but one memorable performance. She can dance, she can sing, she can act, and she can definitely make you laugh. Anita Harris.
You made me laugh.
Welcome to the show. Look, it's lovely to have you.
Lovely
and
to be
thrilled
here.
to see you in the studio. I've been watching you my whole life. And were you a born entertainer?
Oh, I was born in Midsummer Norton in Somerset, where the cider apples grow. My father loved music. And so everything in the home was music, music, music. But skating really took me, from the age of 8, I started ice skating, and that really made me look into different styles of music because, you know, classical and jazz. But then, of course, Elvis Presley came along. And I go back a couple of years, darling, so long before you were born.
Well, no one will believe your vintage, and we're not even going to go there because you look sensational. And by the way, busier than ever. Panto in Windsor, which we're going to come to. And, you know, that's going to be the Christmas treat we all need. And, of course, also the important message you've got about Alzheimer's. We'll come to all of that.
Thank you.
But were you encouraged by your parents to perform? I mean, obviously, you did the skating, so, but was it, you know, was it pushy parents? Were they trying to get you to the top?
No, not pushy. I had a wonderful upbringing. I've got 2 big brothers who are still wonderful brothers to me. We then went to Bournemouth from Bath and Bristol and all of that. Daddy was the one that loved the music and the movies and everything. Mummy was very down to earth, brass tacks, you know.
Sensible.
So a lovely sort of duo. They just wanted the best for the 3 of us, and everything was equal. So when you grow up with that, I think it sustains you throughout your life. I mean, I think of them all the time. They are with me now. They loved the way that I went into singing and into dancing and everything, but they just wanted me to be their daughter, you know. And I think that, in a way, darling, that's something that the longer I'm on this planet, I realise how important it is and how wonderful it is to maintain friendships from those days and, you know, just have all that love around us, really.
Well, definitely, as I mentioned in the introduction, you dance, you sing, you're a brilliant comic actress as well. The music is a great passion of yours, and you had massive chart success. I mean, that's what really put you on the map.
Well, I think I mean, we're condensing a few years, but the 60s really was so innovative because coming through the war years, everything from the Beatles, the Stones, to even... I went to Vegas when I was 16 as a dancing girl in a chorus, and I met and saw Frank Sinatra. And I was taken backstage. We were heavily chaperoned, I might add, but we were taken backstage.
Glad to hear it.
We did 3 shows a night, finished at 4 in the morning, and we had a night off every 12 nights. And then we could see the other artists. There was Frank Sinatra, who we just saw quickly backstage, and he said, he was charming. He said, "Good luck, young ladies, with your careers."
Did he have presence? Did you feel like you were in the presence of greatness?
We sat you were there, and this is the auditorium. The lights go up, the curtain goes up, the orchestra starts, and these blue eyes come right at you.
Really? Yeah.
And you know, that again stays in your heart forever if you've had that experience.
And you were 16?
Yeah. Yep.
So effectively, we can sell it that you were on the same bill as Frank Sinatra to a certain extent.
I think he might have something to say about it.
You said Anita Harris a bit smaller than Frank Sinatra, but your name got bigger and bigger, and you're in the charts and all the rest of it. So many memories of your career. The Carry On films stand out. Were they fun to make?
Oh, fantastic. How I got it. I was working at the Prince of Wales with Frankie Howard. I was doing sketches with him. I was doing my song and dance routines. We were together. And then one night, the producer of the Carry Ons and the director came in to see...
Peter Rogers.
Peter Rogers
Thomas.
and Gerald Thomas, well done, came in to talk to Frankie about his next Carry On. And they came in my dressing room and they said, "Would you like to be in a Carry On?" And that's how it all started.
And it was Carry On Doctor.
Yes.
Which is possibly my favourite.
It's a glorious film.
Because Frankie Howard's character, terrible hypochondriac, and at one point he wakes up and he thinks there's an undertaker in there measuring up.
Yes, isn't it a wonderful scene?
And Jim Dale falling
My
falling
first
down
screen
the
kiss,
place.
darling. Yes.
Really? Yes, of course.
What a clever boy, though. And so, I mean, he went on to do so much else, but...
Yeah, musical theatre, all the rest of it, yeah.
Yes.
But, I mean, it was an amazing cast. You know, yourself and Kenneth Williams, Hattie Jakes, Frankie Howard, Jim Dale...
Barbara Windsor.
Barbara Windsor.
Yeah.
And Charles Hawtrey. I mean, this is talent on another level, isn't it?
It was like joining a repertory company. Remember, I was only in my early 20s, so I was a bit bamboozled by it all. But however, once I had proved myself, I did have to prove myself, it was like joining a family after that. Yeah. And they were individually superb actors in whatever sphere they wanted to go. But as a group, they made magic, didn't they?
That's right. I think the Sid James character had a sort of scam going where he just basically stayed in hospital and wouldn't leave because he was unhappily married.
What a lovely
There's
man.
a great line
Lovely
from
man.
your love interest in that, Jim Dale, and he crashes into a matron played by the rather stout Hattie Jakes.
Yeah.
And she says, Dr. Kilmore, this hospital isn't big enough for the two of us. And he said, oh, no, matron, you're not that big. So great. Such naughty comedy.
Yes.
Do you miss naughty comedy? Do you think things have gone a bit PC now? Or what's your view about the current sort of atmosphere where you've got to be really careful what you say?
Well, it's two ways, isn't it? Going into pantomime, you've got your family audience, and that was the carry-on audience. Mum, granddad, children, aunts, uncles. I think one has to be wary where comedy goes. But when you look at, oh, golly, when I worked with Bernard Braden, and on that was Spike Milligan, Peter Sellers, Harry Seacombe, and I was with Harry at the Palladium for 8 months, to be with that astute humour, but with such endearing qualities about them. And then being with Dudley Moore. I mean, so just lovely. I know. I don't mean to.
They're name dropping you because what's amazing about you is that you are, you know, a bit like Brucey. Maybe you're just so good at lots of different things. And turning your hand to comedy, even though you were so beautiful, you were also so funny, and that's kind of a rare combination, really, and a great skill. Listen, clock's against us. First of all, the panto. When do you go into rehearsal for
Windsor.
that?
We open on the 24th of November.
24th, and so it's in Windsor. What's the venue?
It is, the Windsor Theatre Royal.
The Windsor Theatre Royal.
Beautiful, right opposite the castle. It's beautiful.
Right, so November,
wonderful
get your
cast.
tickets.
Yes, Basil Brush.
And then Alzheimer's.
Yes.
A devastating illness and an issue close to your heart.
It is, my darling. I lost my beloved Michael in May, and everything I...
After a major anniversary.
Our 50th, our golden. We had our golden. So
how long was he afflicted with how many, was it years?
6 years. Yeah. 6 years. But I never lost him, and that I thank God for. And I've written a song called Never Lose Hope, and that we're recording it on Wednesday.
Never lose hope. When's it out?
Never lose hope or be blinded by the light. Never lose love. It helps the world unite. Onwards.
Back to me, Daryl.
Can I have a kiss, please?
They don't make them like that anymore. Virtual kiss now and a real one in just a second. The extraordinary Anita Harris. Anita, thank you so much.
Thank you,
do come and see us again soon. A true superstar. Coming up in the 10 o'clock hour, I'll tell you what we've got, including an announcement about GB News at 10. Don't go anywhere.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A fine start for most of us this weekend. Cloud and rain do turn up through central parts by Saturday afternoon, but sunshine returns through Sunday. So mixed conditions, best times for getting out and about early Saturday or later Sunday. Low pressure moving away from the north of Scotland on Friday nights. Still some showers continuing during the hours of darkness, even the odd shower further south across West Wales and North West England. But for the vast majority, actually, it's clearing skies and winds easing, and that will lead to widely temperatures in the single figures. Even low single figures for some sheltered northern parts as we begin Saturday. So a cold start, and there'll be a few mist patches through central and southern parts of England, mid-Wales, for example, first thing. They'll disappear, and then plenty of sunshine for many on Saturday morning, especially for northern parts of Scotland, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England. Elsewhere, we've got cloud building, we've got rain pushing in, that rain turning heavy and persistent for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales, accompanied by a strong wind with coastal gales. The rain's still with us on Sunday morning. Northern England, parts of Wales, seeing those outbreaks of rain heavy at first. It does tend to push southeastwards and weaken by the afternoon. Sunny spells return elsewhere, a fresher feel for northwest Scotland, but feeling warm in the sunshine away from here. And next week starts off with further rain and showers in places.
Welcome back. In the 10 o'clock hour, at exactly 10 o'clock, I will be making an announcement about GB News. Plus, in my take at 10, after the news, I'll be dealing with Gary Lineker, who now has freedom to be political on social media thanks to lax BBC rules. I'll be dealing with Mr. Lineker, but don't forget that announcement at 10 on the button before the news headlines. Don't go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Strap yourselves in. It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. Daryl, can you kill the music, please? Before we start, as promised earlier, I have something I want to say about this place. It's unusual for a news channel to be the news, but this week we are, and so be it. Following appalling sexist remarks by a guest on Tuesday, which I dealt with in no uncertain terms in my big opinion on Wednesday, which has been viewed far and wide, there followed a sincere apology to the journalist involved and an investigation which is ongoing. On last night's show, I drew attention to the fact that rivals, pillars of the establishment media, were calling for us to be shut down. We've been Ofcom regulated since day one, and will assist fully in relation to any complaints made. Following broadcasting rules is of critical importance to the credibility of this place and any other broadcaster. Envious competitors calling for our head are perturbed and threatened by our growing noise and numbers, and they want us to be shut down. The champagne-guzzling liberal elites want to protect the status quo with one narrative on everything from net zero to the facts of human biology and the integrity of our territorial borders. I received a message from a well-known and senior figure in British politics who replied to an invitation to be on the show tonight by saying that he'd love to do it and apologised for being away at the moment as he was unable to join us. And here's what he said, and I quote, "The establishment will go for you at every opportunity, I fear." Indeed they will. I've been targeted today for daring to make jokes and say hurty words about Harry and Meghan. How disgraceful to be satirically harsh about a couple that call themselves Duke and Duchess. It's good to know that princes and millionaire actresses are now the latest protected class. So, are we done for? Is it game over? Will the establishment see us off with ad boycotts, authoritarian demands to shut us down, or stifling new regulations? Good luck with that. Not on my watch. We are 2 years old, and we've only just begun. In life, you don't achieve anything without making a few enemies, and you don't achieve change without ruffling a few feathers. In the end, we have a duty to you, to offer an alternative, to do it in a different and hopefully fresh and fun way, and to give you a voice. So let me be clear. We won't be shut down, and more importantly, we won't shut up. I certainly won't shut up. It's not in my nature. Have I got news for you? GB News is here to stay. Should we do a show? In my take at 10, with a new set of rules giving their highest paid stars freedom to be political, the BBC have given up any pretense of being impartial. The only winner is Saint Gary Lineker. That's right, I'll be dealing with Gary Lineker in a moment, and let me tell you, I'll be speaking to his #1 fan. In the Newsmaker, will the establishment close down GB News? Of course, that's a topic from my big opinion, but let me tell you that we'll debate it in the papers as well. We've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages, live reaction with our pundits, plus are the liberal elites out of touch with the views of the great British public? I'll be asking a top politics professor who says they need a wake-up call. So a packed show, lots to get through. First, the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. It's 4 minutes past 10. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The 15-year-old girl who died in a school coach crash on the M53 in the Wirral earlier has been named as Jessica Baker. The coach driver also died when the bus overturned. He's not been identified. Pupils were on their way to Cawley Grange and West Kirby grammar schools. This morning, the bus was carrying 54 people when it collided with a car and struck a central reservation. 10 children were taken to hospital, 2 with serious injuries. The Libyan Coast Guard has been accused of deliberately ramming and sinking a migrant boat in the Mediterranean, leaving dozens in the water. Some are still missing.
Mayday, mayday, mayday relay, mayday relay, mayday relay. People in the water.
Well, GB News has received dramatic video taken by the Sea-Watch NGO off the coast of Benghazi. It shows a large inflatable boat begin to sink with a Libyan Coast Guard vessel and a rigid inflatable nearby. Dozens of migrants can be seen in the water using tyre inner tubes as makeshift life jackets. A Sea-Watch spokesperson said at least 50 people were on board, but the survivors cannot be found, having been, in their words, captured and deported to Libya. Sea-Watch says the Coast Guard was responsible for the vessel sinking. The policeman who killed an unarmed man during a foiled prisoner escape more than 7 years ago must now face disciplinary proceedings. Jermaine Baker died attempting to free 2 prisoners who were being taken to court. In 2017, prosecutors decided the firearms officer should not face criminal charges, but the IPOC, an independent police watchdog, has today told Scotland Yard he must face gross misconduct proceedings. The Met says it's reviewing the decision. A second person's been arrested in connection with the felling of a famous sycamore tree next to Hadrian's Wall. The tree in Northumberland was cut down on Thursday in what police believe was a deliberate act of vandalism. A man in his 60s has been detained along with a 16-year-old boy who was arrested yesterday. The sycamore gap tree featured in the 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. A man's been charged in Las Vegas with the 1996 murder of the rapper Tupac Shakur. The 25-year-old was killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas some 27 years ago. A Nevada grand jury has now indicted 60-year-old Dwayne Keffe D. Davis on a charge of murder with use of a deadly weapon. Davis has long been known to investigators and has admitted in interviews he was in the Cadillac when the shots were fired. That is all for the moment here on GB News. We'll have another update in about an hour's time. Now, it's back to Mark.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong, who's back in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In My Take at 10, with a new set of rules giving their highest paid stars freedom to be political, the BBC have given up any pretense of being impartial. The only winner is Saint Gary Lineker. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from my top pundits. This evening, author and journalist Emma Wolfe, GB News star Albi Amankona, and a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight. We're loving his work. Former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. They'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day as well. Plus, I'm looking forward to this. Are the Liberal elite out of touch with the views of ordinary British people when it comes to immigration? And Suella Braverman, I'll be asking a top politics professor who says they need a wake-up call. So a packed hour, and those papers are coming at 10:30. But first, My Take at 10. In a classic BBC fudge, news presenters will no longer be allowed to go on social media and express their political views. But stars like eco-warrior Chris Packham and fried potato salesman Gary Lineker will be allowed to say what they think about politics. They just can't campaign. How does that work? Any tweet in favour of this political cause or another is by definition part of a campaign. If you endlessly tweet about how terrible Brexit is, you're campaigning, aren't you? To express any view on politics is to be politically active. Now, if Gary Lineker or Chris Packham worked for a private company, like this one, for example, a couple of vacancies at the moment, then they could be as political as they like. Knock yourself out. Over here, we're paid to have an opinion. But I'm sorry, if, like Lineker, you're paid over £1 million funded by an obligatory tax on the British people, then you must be politically neutral. It's a great privilege to be paid that amount of money to talk about football. But if you work for the state broadcaster and therefore are effectively a public servant, it's deeply wrong to take sides on important issues of the day and to sow political division. The BBC's job is to bring the nation together. Half the country voted for Brexit, of which Lineker is not a fan. So every time he presents Match of the Day, is he basically labelling 17.4 million people economically illiterate thickos? Are half of the people who watch Match of the Day dreadful human beings for wanting our borders to be policed correctly? Knowing the difference between a biological man and a woman, does that make you a bad person? Or celebrating rather than apologising for our history? Do you see the problem? Now millions of people have to pay almost £160 a year, whilst holier-than-thou Lineker signals his virtue and tweets about major issues facing the country, insulated from the real-world consequences of his luxury beliefs. Working for the BBC is a privilege, without commercial pressures. You don't have to worry about advertisers or ratings. The income is guaranteed, with grannies facing imprisonment if they don't cough up. Major BBC stars are effectively civil servants, so they must remain politically neutral. Big-name faces of the network jumping on Twitter to express their views, by definition, divides the audience of the national broadcaster. Well, here at GB News, we have to sing for our supper and generate our own income and fight for every single viewer. But we are allowed an opinion, and mine is this stinks. What's your view, Mark, at gbnews.com? The BBC would argue that they have tried to strike the right balance. They don't want to stifle free speech. At the same time, they want to make sure their news operation is perceived as 100% impartial. Perhaps the BBC have taken the view that you can't really police the tweets and tell people like Gary Lineker what to say and what not to say. Many would argue that my take at 10 is contradictory and it's against free speech. So what do you think? Let me know, mark at gbnews.com. Let's get the views of my top pundits tonight, author and journalist Emma Wolfe, GB News star Albion Ancona, and former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. Paul, what's your appraisal of this compromise by the Beeb?
I think the BBC's got this about right. I don't think you can shut down free speech, and I don't think somebody like Gary Lineker should be censored for his views if he wants to express them on social media. I think Tim Davies done a good job.
What do you think of what Gary Lineker tweets? Do you not feel that the face of BBC Sport, or certainly BBC Football, shouldn't be sending out tweets with which half the country disagrees?
Well, are you seriously suggesting he should be censored? I thought this was all about free speech, and I think he's a citizen.
Well, he's
has
a civil servant. He's a public servant, isn't he?
He's not a civil servant. He's a broadcaster, but it's
on
not,
the national platform.
But not a state broadcaster. The BBC is not the state. You know, like I say, we are not in North Korea, and he is a free person, and he can talk about issues that he cares about, and that's good. I may agree with him, may not agree with him, but I defend his right to say it.
OK, Albie, where do you stand on the censorship of BBC stars?
So, first of all, I wouldn't call it censorship. The BBC is known for having to be impartial. That is why people respect the BBC. That's what people expect from the BBC, and I think that should be applied to news stars, and I think that should also be applied to entertainment stars. But I also look at this in a different way. I also look at it in imitation is the best form of flattery, and we have brought opinion-based news to a wide audience in the United Kingdom via linear television, and now the BBC is saying, well, we're going to let some of our biggest entertainment stars have opinions. So I look at it as a flattering projection of what we're doing on GB News, because they're trying to imitate what we're doing, and hopefully they won't do as well as us.
But Albie, do you think Gary Lineker should be tweeting about, I don't know, borders policy, Brexit, water nationalisation?
No.
As the face of BBC Football?
No, I don't. As I said before, I think impartiality is why people respect the BBC.
Why does that matter? Why does it matter if he's only a sports host?
It's about consistency, Mark. It's about the brand that the BBC have built themselves, and that is around consistency, impartiality, and it is about being a broadcaster which represents people from across the country. And if you've got one of the biggest BBC stars tweeting things that half the country disagree with, that goes against its role as our national public service broadcaster.
Now, Emma, we get you here tonight because you are fantastic in terms of forwarding your opinions. Do you think it's appropriate that the likes of Gary Lineker, and not just Gary Lineker, by the way, Fiona Bruce, Chris Packham and others have a right to do the same?
Of course they have a right to do the same, but I don't understand why Lineker thinks anyone cares what he thinks about immigration or Brexit or, you know, border policy or anything like that. He's paid a grossly inflated salary, and I think he needs to, you know, get on with his job, which is, well, the reason he's paid that salary is to be a sports presenter. The licence fee is going on his grossly inflated salary, and is that not enough for him to just, you know, keep stum and do his job?
So do you think the rules should be stricter? Do you think this is too lax, this compromise from the Director-General?
I think it's a weird compromise, and you know, if the BBC want to keep pretending that they are impartial, then they need to stop people like Gary Lineker being so wildly partisan.
OK, but aren't you a free speech advocate? I mean, doesn't this guy deserve to say what he thinks? I mean, he's not a newsreader.
Yeah, of course I'm an advocate for free speech, but in terms of his platform at the BBC, I think that he needs to just do his job and talk about sport. That's what he's paid to do.
Well, yes, I mean, the bottom line, Albion Ancona, is that Gary Lineker is the country's best-paid civil servant.
Look, I don't know that I would describe him as a civil servant, but certainly his salary is being paid for from people paying their television licences. And ultimately, as I said before, the BBC is our public service broadcaster, and I think it is inappropriate for BBC stars, whether they're news stars or entertainment stars or sports stars, to be expressing opinions which could be at odds with half or even the majority of the British population. I think it sullies the BBC's record.
Paul, you're shaking your head.
Well, who's going to police this? Is the BBC going to have...
The rules should.
They're going to have a thought police investigating all the social media, everyone that works for the BBC. He's not saying this stuff while presenting Match of the Day. He's doing this on his own personal social media platforms. And are you seriously suggesting the BBC should police those and then censor it? We do not live in North Korea.
But they do it for the news presenters. Do you disagree with that?
Well, I think there's a big difference between Match of the Day and Newsnight.
Do you not think there should be some consistency, as I mentioned?
No, it's about news, and the Ofcom guidance is around news production, isn't it? And that's why he should be allowed to do it. And I think, like I say, Tim Davie has done a good job here. It's a difficult one, but he's given enough latitude to allow citizens to speak their views in public without closing them down like some sort of authoritarian state.
Lineker seems to be unable to keep his head below the parapet. He seems to be obsessed with thinking that everybody cares what he thinks, from his leafy West London, you know, not at all affected by any of the issues that people are facing.
And yet here we are talking about it, so some people obviously do care about what he says.
I think if Gary wants to do opinion, he should move to a broadcaster which is known for opinion.
Exactly.
Andrew Marr moved to LBC.
Exactly.
Other people have moved to this channel. I think that is what broadcasters should be doing if they want to be expressing opinion. If they're going to make a choice to work at the BBC, they should embody the principle of impartiality.
And respect the fact that they are paid by the licence fee, indirectly or directly, and that something like Brexit, for example, over 50% voted for that. Gary Lineker doesn't seem to respect that at all. He seems to show contempt, actually, for over half of the population.
Oh, there you go. Does Gary Lineker have the right to tweet about political issues? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.com. Not only Gary, as I say. It could be Fiona Bruce, it could be Zoe Ball, any of their big stars. Is it OK for them to get political online? Mark at gbnews.com. Coming up in the big story following outrage after her bold speech in America, are Suella Braverman's critics out of touch with the public's views on immigration? I'll be speaking to the top politics professor who says the Liberal elite need a reality check. Plus tomorrow's front pages with instant reaction from tonight's top pundits. All of that is next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show, that's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just time for this, Mark at GBnews.com. Alan says, I cannot stand the overpaid character that is Gary Lineker. However, he's entitled to free speech. I just don't listen to him. Wise words. Thank you, Alan. I hope you listen to me. It's time now for the big story. And Suella Braverman sparked outrage in some circles this week with a speech in which she said that multiculturalism had failed. She criticised the absence of racial integration in some of our cities and the growth of parallel lives in our communities. Speaking in Washington, she said that it's neither racist nor anti-refugee to want to reform the European Convention on Human Rights. She argued Western culture could disappear without harder borders. And she argued that fear of discrimination, including for gay people, should no longer be grounds for granting asylum under international rules. So is outrage following her speech understandable, or does she speak for millions of concerned voters? Let's catch up with a top politics professor and best-selling author who has written this, Values, Voice and Virtue. It's the book that's got the country talking, Professor Matthew Goodwin. Matthew, welcome to the show. If you watch most television networks and read most newspapers, you'd assume that everyone is horrified by Suella Braverman's speech. However, I understand that polling that you've looked at tells a different story.
Yes, it does, Mark. I mean, I think the first thing to say is what Suella Braverman really said was not actually that controversial at all. Angela Merkel and David Cameron, we might remember, also said multiculturalism has failed. Theresa May called to leave the European Convention on Human Rights not that long ago. And so I think the reaction to the speech actually shows us, Mark, how far to the left, the cultural left, many of the people who dominate the institutions, you know, the media, the creative industries, the cultural institutions, have moved over the last decade. Now, look, on the polling, as I said on Twitter today, if you look at all of the recent polling on immigration, on Rwanda, on the ECHR, on people thinking that the borders are out of control, you know, typically between a half and 2/3 of all voters would basically agree with Suella Braverman. They would say that the borders are out of control, immigration has been too high, we need to do something in order to better control who's coming in and leaving the country. So I don't actually think what she said was so adrift from public opinion. I think actually that the new elite who dominate the institutions are adrift from much of the rest of the country.
Yes, and public anger, Matthew, about mass immigration is not limited to this country, is it? It seems to be a crisis of the West.
Well, absolutely. I think if you look at what's happening in Italy and much of Europe at the moment, we've clearly got a global migration crisis that is accelerating as each day passes the last. We've had 11,000 people arrive in Lampedusa in just a few days. There are about 300,000 people have arrived illegally in Europe over the last year, and there is no political consensus in Brussels, Strasbourg, Rome, Berlin about how EU member states actually want to deal with this issue. So I think what Suella Braverman is saying, and look, Mark, I know Suella Braverman reasonably well. You know, we've spent time together, we've talked about these issues, we've discussed the future of the country, and I think what she is really adamant about is getting ahead of this very mediocre, very unsatisfactory debate about immigration. Because, you know, if you're on the liberal left and you strongly disagree with Suella Braverman, that's fine, but you have to put forward your alternative. Now, what's your alternative to the illegal migration bill and the Rwanda scheme? What is your alternative to that? Because we have 40 million people in Africa and the Middle East who say they would like to move to Britain if they could do so tomorrow. So we need a viable immigration policy, and we need a grown-up, mature conversation about what our policy response is going to be. Because, Mark, simply saying let's have more safe and legal routes with no upper limit, that's not a response. And simply calling Suella Braverman a far-right agitator or a racist, you know, that is not a serious response. So my question to the liberal left would be, what is your policy response to this crisis? Because this is only the beginning, not the end, Mark. This is just the beginning of a global migration crisis which is going to change our world in ways we cannot really comprehend currently.
Well, yes, and fair play to Emmanuel Macron, who said in a television interview earlier this week that we cannot accept the misery of the world. And I think that was honest of him to say that. Briefly, Matthew, if you can, do you not think, though, that critics of Braverman have a point that the language is inflammatory, that it's dog whistle politics? She spoke a few months ago about an invasion. Does she cross the line?
I think there are a few things that she probably could have rode back on. I think some of the talk in her speech around particular minority groups experiencing harassment, discrimination and so forth probably could have been left out. She could have kept this, Mark, just to be about a debate around changing the Refugee Convention. But Suella wants to start a debate in this country, and she wants to actually start a debate in the world about how we're going to update the architecture of refugee policy so it's more in line with the reality of the world today.
Do check out Matthew's excellent Substack articles, which can be found at matthewjgoodwin.org, or follow him, GoodwinMJ, on Twitter, the voice of common sense. Thank you, Matthew. OK, folks, the papers are next with full pundit reaction. Don't go anywhere.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK. Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, the BBC has softened its rules on its biggest stars being political on social media. So do the likes of Gary Lineker and Fiona Bruce have a right to get on Twitter and tweet about politics as long as they're not campaigning, which is the BBC policy? Many people have been praising the BBC, saying what a great solution, which in many ways pleases all parties. Well, you're not all pleased, I've got to say. Ian says Gary Lineker needs to wind his neck in. Does he seriously think his privileged platform gives him the right to preach to the nation? And by the way, says Ian, in response to my special statement about GB News at 10, which will be on Twitter shortly, GB News will not be shut down, says Ian. It's the only balanced news on TV. Well, Ian, thank you so much for that. I do have a wonderfully balanced panel tonight. They've been at each other's throats. It's outrageous. It's like WWF. We've got the papers coming. Let me just say from Joanne, surely the likes of Gary Lineker should be subject to the same rules that apply to registered nurses and teachers, in that we are not allowed to publicly express our opinions politically, or we put our jobs at risk. Oh, gosh. Hi, Mark, says Simon. If Gary is happy to take the dirty money for covering the World Cup, then he has no grounds to stand out against other political matters. Well, of course, he was paid by the BBC, but you could argue an element of double standards in attending that event over in the Middle East. Anyway, lots of papers to get through. Let's do it. It is 10:30 or just gone, so time for the front pages, and we start with The Telegraph. Braverman refuses talks with Welby over migration. The Archbishop of Canterbury has been rebuffed in his attempts to meet Suella Braverman to raise concerns about her rhetoric on immigration. The Most Reverend Justin Welby, the most woke Justin Welby, did I say that? Has said, he's been reaching out to the Home Secretary to discuss the government's policy on asylum seekers, but Mrs Braverman has so far failed to agree to any discussions in an apparent snub. Parking app for the whole country as Tories target anti-car measures. Well, that was a topic we raised earlier. A national parking app enabling drivers to pay charges anywhere in the country is to be unveiled by ministers under plans to slam the brakes on anti-car measures. Also, more lawyers for Donald Trump. Melania Trump is believed to have quietly renegotiated her prenuptial agreement with husband Donald. Well, listen, he gets richer by the day, doesn't he? So she's nobody's fool. Daily Express next. And this is just the most outrageous and horrific story. Girl 14 and driver die in horror bus crash. An unimaginable tragedy. Also, Tories declare war on drivers is over. Tying in with that story I've just read you in the Telegraph. Also, on fire, Rory leads Europe to dream start. Ryder Cup special. Daily Mail, poll shows Rishi has got a path to victory. Rishi Sunak's path to election victory was spelled out today by voters who endorse his green agenda and Rwanda plan. Of course, with the Conservative Party conference kicking off this weekend, an exclusive poll for the Mail found that public support for policies that create clear blue water from Labour were going down well. Also, exclusive interview, devastating fallout from Fox's misogyny on GB News, of course. There you go. That is an interview with a journalist who was, of course, subject to some appalling remarks by one of our guests on this channel. She's given an interview with the Daily Mail. We'll talk about that drama in just a couple of minutes. Also, Daily Mirror, tragedy on way to class, school bus in motorway horror. The Times, we can't let tax rises go on forever, insists Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy Hunt has pledged to end the vicious circle of ever-rising taxes by reforming the benefits system and tackling the spiralling cost of public services. In an interview with The Times before next week's Tory party conference, the Chancellor said he'd launched the biggest transformation of public services in a generation. All departments will be told to identify savings from reducing the number of routine tasks carried out by frontline staff, such as doctors, teachers and police officers, and also savings via investment in new technology. The Sun, secrets behind RG defeat. Posh, I still want to kill people who bullied David. Victoria Beckham says she still wants to kill people who attacked and abused her husband after he was blamed for England's exit from the 1998 World Cup. Bex also tells a Netflix documentary of his torment after being sent off. And the Daily Star, more Brits like pineapple on their pizza than not.
Ugh.
Horror of horrors.
Deviants.
You sick deviants, say Daily Star.
Wrong.
UK split 43% to 37% in favour of weird bits of fruit on their margaritas. Sure. It's not a euphemism, by the way, Paul. You can calm down. The argument has finally been settled. More Brits love pineapple on their pizza than they hate. Anyone fancy dough balls with Marmite dip? How about that as another option, suggests the Star. Now, that's what I call sick. Or maybe not. There you go. Well, look, those are your front pages. Let's get full pundit reaction now. I'm delighted to have with me Emma Wolfe, Albi Amankona and Paul Richards. OK, folks, lots to get through, many big stories. Can we start with some good news, Paul? Parking app for the whole country. You find yourself in an unusual borough and you don't know how to pay for your parking because it's a different system. This is what everybody wants to see.
Well, it might work, and I don't, wouldn't really condemn it out of the traps, but it's one of those things that sounds a bit like a wheeze dreamed up for conference season to me, so that the minister can make an announcement in their speech. It's got a little bit of the thick of it around it.
Yeah, but it is something. I mean, a lot of people struggle, especially perhaps some of my older viewers and listeners. They struggle to park their car.
I had this conversation in the car park this morning at 6 a.m. with a lady who was trying to make the app work, and I was standing there trying to make the app work with the rain coming down, and we were trying to read the thing on the QR code, and it would be nice if it worked better. However, government IT projects not always a great success, are they?
No, the background to that is not fantastic, is it? Braverman refuses talks with Welby over migration. It's war. Daggers drawn, Albi.
I think that's wrong. The Archbishop of Canterbury is the most senior clergyman in the country. The Home Secretary is one of the most senior politicians in the country. They should be meeting each other when they request meetings with each other.
Does he want a dreary lecture, though, from this robed
look, I think it's very rude. I think it's very unmannerly. I don't think it's very British. I think if the Home Secretary is invited to meet the Archbishop of Canterbury...
How dare you call the Home Secretary unmanly?
They should unmannerly.
Oh.
They should take...
Did you hear unmanly as well?
Absolutely, yes.
So you think actually this is not really the best way to conduct...
No, I think it's
conduct yourself.
Well, hold on. She's failed to agree yet any meeting. I don't think she's actually snubbed. I don't think she's actually slammed the door in his face or literally put her hand out and said, no, go away. I think she just hasn't responded.
Well, perhaps this is a case...
He said her plans to deport migrants to Rwanda were against the judgment of God. I think he needs to remember that he has a role and she has a role, and they're different. And he's overly politicising his role. And that is problematic.
Well, perhaps she wants to put the Archbishop of Canterbury, Paul, in his place, given that he's spoken out.
Back in his pulpit.
Right. So that's a good headline. It's so outspoken on very political issues, which is beyond his pay grade.
Well, our Constitution gives him a political voice because he's in the House of Lords.
Precisely.
And he's not the only one. The bishops are there from the Church of England. Now, you either say that's a good thing and support that and allow them to speak out, or you get rid of them, and maybe even get rid of the whole House of Lords. But as things stand, he has got a constitutional role.
But what would he say to his parishioners, his flock, who support the Rwanda plan?
Well, I'm sure he'd say the same to them as he's saying to the government, which is that it's ungodly.
Wouldn't he call them sinners?
Maybe. I have him in and ask him.
Should the Archbishop of Canterbury be making...
theology now, are we?
Well, maybe. I'm out of my depth, not for the first time. Should he be wading into those waters, though?
Well, historically, the Church of England in Parliament has had that role to speak up on social issues as they see it. I mean, whether you support that or not, that's up to you to decide. But they do have a constitutional role, and they are right to speak out.
Well, Albi, she hasn't responded to the invitation so far. Perhaps this is what my son would call CBA, which apparently is can't be asked.
Yeah, that is the correct explanation of that acronym.
I'm down with the kids.
You are. Down with the Gen Zers.
I'm in touch with young people, which, by the way, is another story, and my lawyers are watching.
Mark.
Shall we have a look at the Express? And Albi, red meat for lots of voters. We discussed it briefly earlier. Tories declare war on drivers is over. Rishi Sunak shifting to the right noticeably and going very populist. Will it work?
I think it could work, but then you say shifting to the right and he wants to implement this state national car parking app, which to me sounds actually quite left-wing. So I think populist is probably right. It sounds very popular, but for me, I was like, I don't think that's something the state should be getting involved in.
What they're doing is they're actually nationalising parking, aren't they?
Well, exactly.
Jeremy Corbyn will be delighted.
I'm sure the government will be horrified to hear that. But the point is, as I mentioned earlier on, he's fishing for votes. And I think he can probably get them with the motorist vote.
So we've got these car-friendly policies. We've got the diluting of net zero, and I think there's more of this messaging to come. He struck quite an anti-woke note in recent months as well.
I don't like the phrase diluting net zero. He's aligning our net zero project with continental Europe and California.
You should be a spin doctor, let me tell you. You're wasted in this studio. But many would argue, Paul would argue, this is desperate stuff from the Prime Minister.
No, it is about winning votes, and this is what politicians do before elections in order to find voter coalitions, which is going to get them over the line at the next election. It's exactly what Keir Starmer's doing, but behind the scenes. He's not telling us what his policies are. At least Rishi Sunak is being honest about
it. But Sunak's the Prime Minister. He should be running the country and fixing our problems, not trying to cobble together
with
electoral
policies
coalitions.
to fix our problems, and here you are complaining about it.
What do you think, Emma, about the Prime Minister's Damascene conversion to Conservatism?
It's a Damascene conversion to being popular. He got a bit of a bounce in his step when he did this dilution of green...
Alignment.
Green climb down. Well, no, it is a climb down, because he's saying, I'm not going to take the steps we need to take, like heat pumps and electric cars and all of that, to get to net zero, but we're still committed to net zero.
We're taking the steps 5 years later, aligned with
and we're not going to do any of the steps that we need to take to get there, but we'll still get there.
European economies.
Why not just be honest?
Because we've already come so far, we don't need to take as much action.
Why not just be honest with people? We don't have the infrastructure. Why not just be honest and say, no, I'm actually not committed to net zero?
I think that's right. Look, he's committed to net zero. Your point about the infrastructure is totally right. The reason why we've done this is because the electricity grid is not set up to deal with electric cars. I think we do need to be honest about that.
And it wouldn't work to try and retrofit a load of heat pumps into leaky Victorian drafty houses across the country, and people don't want to pay for net zero.
There's a lot of work to do with insulating our homes properly and getting set up for the future. I think we can do it. I think Rishi Sunak's doing it in a proportionate way.
Paul, Sunak is certainly biting at the ankles of Keir Starmer, isn't he? And narrowing the polls. What's your response to that?
Well, I've always argued that the next election is not a done deal. I don't think Labour has sealed the deal with the electorate. A lot of voters who voted for Conservatives last time may not switch automatically. The red wall is not going to tumble uniformly, and Labour knows this. So when the conference season comes around, which we're in the middle of now, you know, they've got to set their stall out, and Labour has to give a compelling vision, not just wait for the government to fall, because it won't. The Conservatives, let's not forget, are the most successful electoral force in Western Europe, historically, and Labour's quite bad at winning elections, let's also admit. So it's not over till it's over, you know.
Yeah, listen, I'm on record as saying that there have been plenty of times in the 20th century and bits of the 21st when Labour governments have done really good and important things for the country. But is there any point having a Labour government when there's no cash?
Well, yes, because the government spends an enormous amount of money. You can spend it differently and you have different priorities, even within the envelope that you've got. And Rachel Reeves has made that point. There isn't going to be extra cash, but ministers have to come into those departments if they win and get that opportunity and spend the money more wisely.
Do you think, though, that the Labour grassroots will be disappointed when Keir Starmer gets in and is prudent?
Well, there are going to be sections of the left who will cry betrayal, but they're already doing that now. He hasn't even won yet, but that is their narrative.
Hashtag Starmer out, often trending on Twitter.
Absolutely. People just think he's the worst thing. And, you know, those people are always there, but they are, thank heavens, a minority now.
Well, we can agree on that. So, listen, lots to come. We've saved our best till last. We've been conducting an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. We've been asking, will ending the war on motorists help Rishi Sunak win the next election? Well, the results are in. We shall reveal all next. Plus, my pundits will be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. Plus, more papers and are attractive people more trustworthy? That's next.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Lovely to have your company. Now, in the course of today, we've been conducting a Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. We've been asking, will ending the war on motorists help Rishi Sunak win the next election? Well, it's pretty tight, actually. 51.2% say yes, 48.8% say no. Let's get more reaction to the big stories of the day from Albi Amankona, Paul Richards, and Emma Wolfe. Take your time, Director Darryl. God, he's already clocked off, hasn't he? Can't get the staff these days, I tell you. Right, OK, Darryl's marvellous. We've known each other for a long time, and I know where the skeletons are hidden. Right, let's crack on, because we've got so many other stories to get through to sink our teeth into. And, of course, the Eye. Have we got the Eye, Dominique? Are we ready to flash that one up? Yeah, let's have a look at that. It's just in, hot off the press. Courtesy of Lottie and Ellen. Thank you to the team today for doing a great job. Clamp down on traffic fines and 20-mile-an-hour zones as Tories gamble on the driver vote. Also, Sunak and Johnson face bombshell COVID inquiry evidence. Brilliant stuff. OK, well, there you go. So many topics to get through. Dominic, when you get a second, fire up that good-looking, trustworthy thing, because I think it's a great topic. But before we get to that, let's have a look at a couple of other stories, if we can. The Daily Telegraph, more than half of men now have facial hair. And... well, that's not exactly burning topic of the day, is it? I'm sure we can find... I'm sure we can find better than that.
I thought was really interesting. I think it was on the front of the Times.
Thank you.
There's a picture of Daniel Craig, who was at an award ceremony called the Justice Albie Awards in New York. And I had absolutely no idea that I had an awards ceremony in my name happening in New York.
Listen, you've always been award-winning in my eyes. Will the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, win awards if he cuts taxes? This is in the Times newspaper, right next to Daniel Craig's handsome face. We can't let tax rises go on forever, insists Hunt. But, Emma, can Britain afford tax cuts? I don't think we can.
I don't think we can at the moment, but he's just saying that because it's all happening tomorrow. And obviously, statement of the bleeding obvious, we can't let tax rises go on forever. They can't just keep on rising and rising and rising. Yeah. So he is saying that vote for us and your taxes will come down. It'll all be fine.
Yeah, I mean, briefly, Paul, what do you think about the tax burden, highest since the war? Will Labour get it down?
Well, I don't know, but it's interesting, isn't it? The Conservatives are supposed to be a tax-cutting party, and here they are with the highest taxes.
Fair comment.
The IFS this week said so. And this is the sort of conference season speech you get where they talk about low taxes, but judge them by their deeds, which are to put all our taxes up.
OK. Actually, just, Albie, you're very good on economics, because you're a bit of a financier, aren't you?
Yeah, in my other job, I'm a finance.
That's where you make your proper cash.
But what I would say...
Can Britain afford tax cuts?
No, not at the moment. But we've also got to be honest about why taxes are rising. That is because we've got an ageing population and a shrinking labour force, a stagnant economy. Until we sort out those issues, taxes will continue to go up because we've got to pay to support those older people on pensions and who need healthcare.
Amen to that. Look, a quick one on this. It's not a revelation to say that good-looking people have it easier. Research shows they get promoted quicker and are offered more employment opportunities and even find it easier to get financial loans. Good-looking people can borrow money. So you've got to ask yourself, are attractive people more trustworthy? Do they get a better gig? Well, Paul, you can tell us what it's like.
Do you know, not something that's really featured very heavily in my life, I have to say, this issue.
You're a babe.
Well, it's quite interesting, though, that what is considered to be good-looking in each generation is totally different, isn't it?
Not really.
Well, you look at Marilyn Monroe, you know, who today would be considered plus sizes, you know, absolute pin-up in the 50s. And I think it does shift generation to generation. And also
definitely,
different
because
cultures, too.
You're so right, because
Look back at James Dean. Marilyn Monroe is still considered beautiful. Yes, she's larger than the kind of classical...
Well, she wouldn't have done well in the
now.
90s with Kate Moss and all those skinny models, would she?
OK, but we still know that Marilyn Monroe is bombshell gorgeous. We still agree that symmetry, that blondness, that youth, that kind of beauty is still beautiful.
There's the golden ratio, which people have been using to judge beauty.
That sounds like a nightclub, by the way.
It is about balance.
Since the Greek times, which is it's literally a number which classical buildings are built from, which neoclassical buildings are built from, which beautiful faces, as we consider our beautiful, are... They all fit the golden ratio.
They do.
So this standard of beauty is something which has been around for thousands of years.
There you go. Well, you've got the golden ratio, let me tell you. Can we talk about headline heroes and back page zeros of the day? Starting with you, Emma. Who's your headline hero?
My headline hero is, well, I've actually been trumped by Melania Trump, but in the Telegraph. She was my headline hero because nothing says commitment and sentiment and romance like renegotiating your prenup for possibly the third time. This woman is clearly saying to Donald Trump, by the way, while you're on the skids, mate, while you're being dragged through the courts, I'm going to renegotiate that prenup for the third time because this is a business arrangement. Don't even pretend it's a marriage. This is a business arrangement. She wants more cash for her and her teenage son, Barron.
Good luck to her.
Barron Trump.
No, I'm a huge admirer. I'd quite like her to be president. Albie, your hero of the day.
I've got two heroes, actually. My heroes, Mark, are you and Patrick, who've been stepping up this week and keeping our coverage flawless over what's been a very difficult week.
You big sucker.
So, well, no, but thank you.
You can come back. You've got the golden ratio.
Oh, stop it.
No, listen.
Get a room, you guys.
Let me say that's very, very kind of you, and I've had so much support from viewers on email and listeners as well. So thank you, Albie, and thank you to everyone watching and listening. Paul, your hero.
Well, somebody who we lost this week, and that's Michael Gambon, the actor.
Absolutely.
Now, that conversation we've just had about good looks, he proves, you know, I'm not being rude about it, but he's not a chiselled Hollywood archetype, is he?
No.
He was a brilliant, brilliant actor.
Correct.
And he was a great British icon, and I think it's really sad that he's gone. I loved him playing in Layer Cake as a gangster.
Layer Cake, the Cockney gangster, wasn't it?
That was, to me, his best role.
Layer Cake was good, and The Singing Detective and many other great things. OK, Emma, briefly, if you can, your back page zero.
My zero is Keir Starmer for reopening this whole divisive argument over private schools and whether or not they should be VAT, 20% VAT on private schools, or whether they should be shut down, whether they should have their charitable status taken away. Totally unnecessary. We don't need to go over that again.
OK, I'll be your back page zero.
My back page zero is Adam Boulton, formerly of Sky and of Times Radio, for saying that we should be shut down. We're not going to be shut down, and we'll be on the Saturday 5 tomorrow from 7.
Good plug. Paul, briefly, if you can, your zero of the day.
I can be as brief as you like. Matt Hancock.
Yeah.
For everything,
which
basically.
Speaks for itself, of course, doing reality TV and all the rest of it. Look, Paul, great first gig, and, of course, Albie and Emma, brilliant, as always. Most importantly, thank you for your company. It means so much. If you're enjoying the show, if you're enjoying the channel, tell your friends, tell your family. Let's change the world together. I'm back tomorrow at 9. And let me tell you, Headliners is next. See you tomorrow.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A fine start for most of us this weekend. Cloud and rain do turn up through central parts by Saturday afternoon, but sunshine returns through Sunday. So mixed conditions, best times for getting out and about early Saturday or later Sunday. Low pressure moving away from the north of Scotland on Friday nights. Still some showers continuing during the hours of darkness, even the odd shower further south across West Wales and northwest England. But for the vast majority, actually, it's clearing skies and winds easing, and that will lead to widely temperatures in the single figures. Even low single figures for some sheltered northern parts as we begin Saturday. So a cold start, and there'll be a few mist patches through central and southern parts of England, mid-Wales, for example, first thing. They'll disappear, and then plenty of sunshine for many on Saturday morning, especially for northern parts of Scotland, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England. Elsewhere, we've got cloud building, we've got rain pushing in, that rain turning heavy and persistent for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales, accompanied by a strong wind with coastal gales. The rain's still with us on Sunday morning. Northern England, parts of Wales seeing those outbreaks of rain heavy at first. It does tend to push southeastwards and weaken by the afternoon. Sunny spells return elsewhere, a fresher feel for northwest Scotland, but feeling warm in the sunshine away from here. And next week starts off with further rain and showers in places.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar.